Welcome back to the Hospice Volunteer Training Series. Because the prevalence of Alzheimer's disease continues to increase in our society, we're going to dedicate this segment to Alzheimer's. As you go through this material, you'll have a clearer picture of what to expect and how to support a hospice patient with Alzheimer's disease. If you'd like to follow along, please turn in your manual to the section marked Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a degenerative and irreversible disease that changes the makeup of the brain. Always fatal, it usually begins gradually, with early symptoms often being compensated for and barely noticed. But as the disease progresses, it impacts thinking processes, language, memory, personality, and behaviors. Alzheimer's is not a part of normal aging. According to the National Institute on Aging, Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia, a brain disorder that affects a person's ability to function in daily life. Dementia affects things like use of language, memory function, and judgment. It is not a disease itself, but is a group of symptoms that result from certain conditions or diseases such as Alzheimer's. Other diseases that result in dementia include Parkinson's, Huntington's, and Pick's disease. In addition, multiple strokes in the brain can result in multi-infarctate dementia, coming on suddenly as the strokes affect brain function. Other conditions, such as depression, nutritional deficiencies, drug interactions, brain tumors, thyroid problems, or infections can also result in symptoms of dementia appearing. It's important to understand that Alzheimer's disease is one of many conditions and diseases that result in dementia. Anyone experiencing symptoms of dementia should be tested thoroughly to determine what is causing their problem. Unlike Alzheimer's, some causes, such as drug interactions, nutritional deficiencies, thyroid, and depression, are reversible if diagnosed and treated. Alzheimer's disease is named after Dr. Alzheimer, a German physician who, in 1906, discovered clumps or plaques and tangles in the brain of a woman who died of what was considered mental illness. These plaques and tangles in the brain are unique to Alzheimer's disease. As they grow, they take away more and more brain function until finally death occurs. Years ago, this condition was often referred to as hardening of the arteries. It is estimated that over 5 million Americans have Alzheimer's disease. The risk increases as we grow older, with those over age 85 having a 50% chance of developing the disease. With our population living longer and longer, the prevalence of Alzheimer's is predicted to increase dramatically in the future. Currently, over half of persons living in nursing homes have Alzheimer's or some type of dementia. Alzheimer's usually appears after age 60. However, there is a growing prevalence of younger persons developing early onset Alzheimer's. I have a cousin who began to experience symptoms of dementia in his mid-40s. He struggled for years not knowing what was at the root of his problems. Eventually, after months of testing to eliminate causes, he was given a diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's at age 50. Life expectancy after diagnosis ranges between 8 and 10 years, with some persons living as long as 20 years. Because the disease progresses at different rates and is often not diagnosed in its early stages, it's very difficult to predict how long someone will live with the disease. Currently, there is no cure, but there are medications that can slow the progression and allow persons to remain on a plateau for some time. We don't know what causes Alzheimer's, but certain risk factors have been identified. We've already mentioned age, which is the first risk factor. Family history and genetics is another risk factor that seems to be most prevalent among those with early onset. The family health connection does not appear to be a huge risk factor among those who develop the disease later in life. A short protein in the blood has also been isolated and identified as a risk factor. Because Alzheimer's is terminal, hospice will often provide care during the last stage of life. Unfortunately for many, the terminal diagnosis is often not made until death is quite imminent. Because of its unique and unpredictable speed of progression, it can be very difficult for physicians to make a diagnosis of 6 months or less. Therefore, hospice care is not available for many patients until weeks or even days before they pass. However, persons with Alzheimer's may also have other conditions such as heart disease, cancer, or any number of terminal conditions. Therefore, we may serve persons who are terminal due to one condition, but are also diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Because Alzheimer's is a progressive disease, it is often characterized by stages, similar to the idea of the human developmental stages. Only these stages are in reverse, helping define an individual's decline through the disease process. Some authorities use numbers to define the stages. Others use terms such as mild, moderate, severe, or some combination of these various labels. The initial 7-stage system was developed by physician Barry Reesberg at the New York School of Medicine's Silverstein Aging and Dementia Research Center. The idea behind the stages is to help give a frame of reference in understanding the disease and its progression. While the stages help us better understand the symptoms and changes in behavior, they are not an exact science. The disease process is unique for each individual. Having said that, let's take a look at some general divisions or these progressive stages. Stage 1, or the early stage, is a time of forgetfulness. Some of the most common symptoms include memory loss, anger, less energy, personality changes, poor judgment. This early stage can be very difficult as the individual realizes something is wrong. They may be able to compensate for a while by writing themselves notes and drawing maps. Other family members may also compensate without even realizing they are doing so. This can be a time of frustration, depression, and anger as the disease slowly begins to take away the mind. Stage 2, or the early middle stage, is often referred to as a time of confusion. The symptoms of stage 1 continue to increase, causing more and more frustration. Most persons find it difficult to make decisions or follow directions. They may ask the same question over and over. They may forget to bathe, shave, or take care of themselves. Stage 3, or the late middle stage, can be a time of disorientation. By now, the individual does not know where they are in time. They have little short-term memory recall, but can often still remember their early years. They may not recognize family members or friends by name. Many have a hard time finding words to express themselves, while others begin to use swear words that they have never used before. They may feel lost and prone to wander. They may become easily agitated and restless, particularly in the evening. They may not be able to recognize numbers or the sequence of numbers. They may be suspicious and paranoid. They may lose inhibitions and disrobe at any time. They may hide things or wander into other people's rooms if living in a nursing home. The fourth or late stage is sometimes referred to as a time of dependency. The patient often cannot recognize the faces of his or her family. The ability to feed oneself is usually gone, and even swallowing is difficult. The skin begins to break down and infections may develop. There is loss of bladder and bowel control. Very few words can be expressed. Some persons will experience seizures. Most will sleep much of the time. The patient needs help with every aspect of living. Some may scream, moan, or groan for no apparent reason. Many persons in this final stage are living in a nursing home due to the complete care that is required. Please remember that these stages are just rough outlines of the disease progression. Each person's symptoms will be unique to them and will evolve over the course of many years. Not only is Alzheimer's a very difficult disease for the person experiencing it, but the family is also affected in ways that are different from other terminal diseases. With most terminal conditions, the person's mind stays intact until the very end. Relationships between family members are constant because they know one another. The mind continues to function even as the body declines. With Alzheimer's, the body may remain relatively strong initially while the mind deteriorates. When patients can no longer recall the names or recognize the faces of their family members, life changes dramatically for those that love them. They are no longer able to maintain the relationship that has been theirs throughout a lifetime. They cannot understand the behaviors or the changes in the personality. Their loved one becomes a stranger. One of the most difficult situations is when a spouse of many years living in a nursing home no longer remembers their husband or wife and begins to pay attention to another man or woman living in their unit. It's easy to see why Alzheimer's affects not only the individual but also the entire family in ways that are unique from other diseases or conditions. Watching a loved one's mind and then body disintegrate slowly over many years is like a very slow death. The grieving process begins years before death occurs. Let's look now at some of the most common behaviors and how we can best work around them and serve our Alzheimer's patients. Most patients do not have short-term memory, but they can recall distant memories. Don't expect the patient to remember you visited earlier in the week, or possibly even that you have ever met. Start fresh each visit if you have to. Hi, I'm Sally. Is it all right if we visit for a while? Ask leading questions about their childhood or early adulthood. These early memories seem to remain vivid for many. Ask the family if they have a photo album or memory books that you could use to trigger those long-ago memories. Do not be alarmed if the patient asks for persons who are deceased. Remember, they are in a different reality. They don't know what year it is, or that their mother has been deceased for 50 years. Do not attempt to explain reality. Go with the flow and enter their world. I'm not sure where your mother is. I think she'll be back tomorrow. Answer their inquiries and then try to move on to other topics. What's the favorite food your mother cooked for you? Did you have a garden when you were growing up? Remember, walking with them in their reality means it's okay to fib a little. I want to go home is a common statement made by persons with Alzheimer's disease, whether they're in a nursing home or even in their own home. Because they are lost in our world, they may not even recognize their home of 30 years. What they're really wanting is to feel like they are home. Most of us think of home as a place that is safe, full of love, full of familiar faces, foods, and things. Home is a place where we feel cared for. One of the best things we can do for someone wanting to go home is to help them feel safe, secure, and loved, and then try to distract them. For some, that might mean a hug, a smile, or asking them about their home. Where is your home? How many brothers and sisters do you have? Where did you go to school?